Sree from BizBuzz coming back to you, and BizBuzz is what matters the most in your business. Sponsored by My Work Belt. My Work is a software application for managing service-based business. If you own or if you are responsible for running a service-based business, you don't want to miss. Coming back to the topic, and I have the great speaker, who is ally for me. He's a principal ally for me. Though they will be helping businesses who are on high trust and high sales ticket items, and they are the masters in marketing. So, Craig, how are you doing?
Sree, I'm doing wonderfully. It's great to talk to you again.
Excellent. Thank you very much for joining today. And I wanted to talk about objections in closing the transaction for sales, but through marketing. So, how do you answer the objections through marketing? Because oftentimes, when I receive the calls, I can tell the customer is already sold. I don't need to put an extra effort to sell. Now, when I do put an extra effort to sell, I might be at a risk of breaking the transaction opposed to actually closing the transaction. Now,
And
that
that's,
happens when their objections are cleared, when whatever the marketing effort that I'm doing it, I may not be purposely doing it, but I'm realizing that how do we answer these objections so that the calls that we receive are already sold, which is
yeah.
brilliant idea.
No, and Sree, you are so right that once somebody raises the objection,
Yes,
you're already behind. And so the key is to know the objections and proactively address them in a way that doesn't sound like you're addressing the objections.
indeed.
And
Yes,
so one of my sayings is the art of sales is being able to do it without getting caught. And
that is true. But why your book is magic.
yeah. And so there's a lot of objections. I'm going to narrow down the scope a little bit, but let me first tell a story about when my wife was trying to sell me on an idea, and I was not agreeable.
Uh-huh.
And so you know that I was in a coma for 6 weeks, and there's a couple things that happen when you're in a coma. One is your body atrophies. And so I lost 40 pounds in the hospital. And when I woke up, I couldn't lift my arms or legs. I was, just completely weak.
Right.
The other thing that happens in
Yes.
a coma is your brain gets a little bit foggy, gets a little bit confused.
Mhm.
And so when I woke up from my coma, the one thing I knew was I didn't like the hospital and I wanted to leave. And I at least wanted to get up and walk around. And so I start having this argument with my wife. And I said, I want to walk. And she said, Craig, you can't walk. And I said, I can too. She's like, no, you can't. We go back and forth. And all the evidence was on her side. I'm laying in a bed. I can't lift my arm. I can't lift my leg. I wasn't even strong enough to hit the nurse's call button. And I had a big tube coming out of my throat that was tethered to a machine next to the bed. And so all the evidence proved that she was right and I was wrong. But I just had this strong belief based on some dreams I had in my coma that I could walk. And so that was a losing argument. She got frustrated. She put the thing up, the little gate up on the bed to keep me from rolling out. And that was kind of the way that argument ended. Neither of us were real happy. And so the next almost argument came when I told her, I was a couple days later, a little bit stronger. I said, I want my phone so I can text people. And she knew I didn't know how to use my phone at that point. Again, my brain was fogged.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But instead of having the argument, she said, sure. And she put my phone in my hands. And I stared at it for 5 minutes and I couldn't figure out how to unlock the phone. And so I eventually just handed it back to her. And so that was her way of handling the objection. I believed I could use my phone. And instead of her trying to argue with me all the reasons that I couldn't, she did what we call a workshop. She's like, and she became the major supporter of doing what I'm trying to do. And so she was like, here you go. Here's your phone. Text everybody in the world. Have fun. And as soon as I figured out, all of a sudden I believed it. She didn't have to persuade me. And so, what I would say if we take this over to sales, we've all had those situations where our customers come to us and they have some belief, they're believing the wrong thing. You can try to argue with them, and it's about as successful as my wife's first argument with me, trying to convince me that I couldn't walk when I believed I could. Facts don't matter, data doesn't matter. And so, what you can do is say, hey, we're going to help you do this. We're going to do a little bit of a workshop. And what you do is you design the workshop so that they start understanding the things they don't fully realize. They start realizing what appears to look simple is actually hard, or what they thought they didn't need, they actually need.
Really neat.
And what you're doing when you do that is you're preserving their autonomy, which is a big word for me. You know me, you hear me bring that up a lot. And you're preserving their dignity. But the autonomy is really key. And so when you do that, they come along with the belief they should have, and the argument goes away. So that's one method is a workshop.
They actually to trust you more than ever before because now you let them to realize their own false beliefs, which elevates trust.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And that's, and we've talked about my book, Make Sales Magical. We talk about building offers. One of the components of a good offer is of a good introductory offer is it includes elements of a workshop where you actually work on problems together. It's for that reason. Well, that's one of the reasons. Another reason is it builds intimacy and trust, but it's to help them realize, oh, wait a minute, I I didn't know what I didn't know.
Certainly.
So then there's another method that we use, and it's called priming questions. And the reason I
Mhm.
call them priming questions is it primes the brain to think in a particular way.
Right.
So, um, a lot of sales questions are some version of, are you tired of failing in life? And people hear that and you're like, you're just trying to manipulate me. You know,
Yeah.
no, no, I want to fail more. It's one of these. I mean, the question is worded a little more subtly, but people have gotten used to these questions. They're like, wait a minute, that's a sales question. You're just trying to, you're just trying to box me in. And but priming questions are different. Priming questions are questions that would be perfectly reasonable for you to ask someone.
Mhm.
And they also, when you ask them, you're pretty sure that they won't know the answer to it, and you're also pretty sure that they will immediately realize they should know the answer to it.
You're suggesting that instead of answering an objection, you go back with priming question
You lead
to
with
in
priming
response to that.
questions
You lead with priming question. Okay.
because you want to address the objections before they're ever raised.
Right.
So, and I'll tell you, one of the priming questions, if anybody gets on a sales call with me, there are a few questions I'm going to ask, and they are purposeful.
Mhm.
They're reasonable for me to ask. And I'm also fairly certain people don't know the answers to them because that's been my experience. But
Yeah.
I'll ask them, what's the lifetime value of a customer?
That's
And
good priming question.
right,
It's
isn't
not really a
And you see, it's reasonable for me to ask that question. If I'm going to do marketing for you, I need to know how much how valuable a customer is to your business. And so usually what happens with that is they don't know the answer. And so we workshop a little bit and I help them
Mm-hmm.
find the answer. So instead of shaming them for not knowing the answer, I just say, hey, look, no, most people don't know the answer.
Right.
The next question I ask after that is if they come back and we figure out that lifetime value of a customer is worth about $200,000, I'll ask them, okay, if the lifetime value of a customer is worth $200,000, how much of that $200,000 would you be willing to spend to acquire a new customer? And again, a lot of people, nobody thinks that's an unreasonable question. The biggest objection I get to that question is, I don't know, what should I spend? And so then I turn it around and I tell them, I say, it's really your choice because it is their choice. And I tell them, if you want to go faster, if you want to grow faster, you should spend closer to the lifetime value. If you want to grow slower, you should spend closer to zero. Think of it as a gas pedal, but it's your choice, and you're the only one that can make that choice.
Indeed. And every business is different. Their expense is different. How to manage, how much you are investing in, what you're spending in managing and delivering the process with the customer is different. So if it is manufacturing, that's different. So it is indeed correct that business owner or business management team is the right people to know how much they can invest in order to acquire the customer. And again,
Right.
it's a customer acquisition cost. And now it doesn't mean that if um, you are spending $10 and you're acquiring one customer, uh, that doesn't mean you're only spending $10 and expect a customer tomorrow. And it has to be a reasonable amount of capital go to invest in bring your X amount of prospects and then turn those fractions of those prospects to customers. So
Yep.
this is an overall mathematical formula they do, but you lead them to go through that formula and come up with their own number will elevate the trust uh, on you and
Yes.
helps you close your own transaction.
And when it comes time for them to find out how much it costs to hire us, we're not using, we have that number. That's their number. And that's one of the reasons why I insist they need to come up with a number. It can't be
Yeah,
the number I believe is right. And I've had somebody come in and say, well, we don't even want to think about that. And they just wanted to spend a ridiculously small amount of money on marketing. And I just told them, I said, I'm sorry, I don't think we can help you. We
right.
won't. And if if your metric, if you're going to be grading me on whatever I spend, I should always spend less. I don't want that business. If I hit your goal for customer acquisition, I want you to feel good. I want to feel good. I want to be, honestly, I want to be complimented on the job I did. But I want us to
Indeed.
be able to celebrate. I don't want the next conversation to be, well, that's still too much. Make it cheaper.
No, that's great. No, that is a bold response. Thank you very much, Craig, for sharing the details with me. There are multiple ways in answering the objections, and one of the best way that, in our experience, is answering the objections through priming questions. And we, as in every industry, has their own priming questions. But the best examples that you gave is what is the lifetime value of your customer, and what is the customer acquisition cost. In other words, how much are you willing to spend in order to acquire that customer who is your X amount of lifetime value? Thank you
Yeah.
very much for sharing with us. And those questions are well worth for the whole podcast. I am hoping who can use those questions to lead your customer in you the answer that you needed and help you to close the transaction. Thank you very much for joining me today, and I greatly appreciate your valuable insights and sharing your knowledge and time.
Thank you, Sree. It's been great. You have a great day.
You too.